Oh, we're back, and welcome to the VADSBC Live. I did say live. We are live, folks. Back here live to do our show. Our show live. We have some great guests. Well, we have one great guest. Today we've got a great guest who will be here today. Thank you for coming back to VADSBC Show Live. VADSBC is the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus, and we're great. We're loving having you back here with us. And we're happy to talk to you about the things we keep talking to you every week, once a week, about what we need to cover. But, you know, most of all, I'm just glad to see everyone back here today because we've got some things we want to talk about again this week, just to keep everybody on track, keep everybody going where they need to go. You know, we already gave you our intro music. You know that we love you out there. We know that we're looking for small businesses and our Democrats to be out there, soon to be small business owners, people who are just connected with the show, and you know, just everybody just to be woke for Woke Wednesday. That's right. It's not a bad term. It's good. You need to stay woke because trust me, there are things that are going on out there that you need to make sure you're being vigilant about. And I'm happy to be here with you folks today. Again, my name is Mark Kennedy. I'm the chair of the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. And we're coming to you once a week with various different guests just to inform you about what's going on and who's out there that you should be paying attention to, what's happening politically here in the state of Virginia, and maybe just some things about small business, and then a guest that can talk about some issues that are of concern to all Virginians, not just small business owners. You don't have to clue in, and you don't have to, I say clue in, you don't have to be a small business owner to be coming on to watch the show. You can just be a concerned Democrat who's interested in knowing what's going on and getting our version of what we've seen that's out there and what we believe that's important. So folks, let me just tell you what I always do. If you've watched the show before, you know the first thing we always talk about is, one, I introduce my co-host, Erin, but Erin's on the run again today. She may be in here today, but we'll see. If not, we can still move forward and go on to the next piece. Erin will be here soon. Erin actually is the interim small business chair for the Democratic Party of Louisiana, and she'll be back again to tell us what's going on down south and what's happening in her life. But for now, let me go to the next thing. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the is COVID. And that cough was not because I have COVID, but I have had my vaccinations. I've had both Pfizer vaccinations, still wear my mask when I'm out there. I still social distance. But the reason why I got the vaccinations, and I am encouraging everybody to get their vaccinations, because if you should get the COVID flu, it will be something that will help you to survive and help you to protect your family members and yourself. So folks, if you haven't gotten vaccinated, my advice to you is get vaccinated, because getting vaccinated is a thing that's going to keep you healthy, and it just might save your life or the life of some loved ones or close friends. It's a big political issue, but it really isn't. It's just science. So my advice, get your vaccinations. Stay healthy, keep your family healthy, keep yourself healthy, and, you know, be here with us. You know, no matter where you sit on the side of the fence, we still want you to stay healthy and keep yourself healthy, just so that you can continue to contribute to this fantastic conversation we're having out here about how we ought to run this great country of ours. Well, listen, I'm going to move on to the next thing, because the next thing is very important to me. I'm back with my shirt on again, and I'm just going to tilt my screen again a little bit. That's right, voting rights. And this is my shirt I got, t-shirt. You always got to get a t-shirt when you go to these rallies. But that's the rally for voting rights that happened earlier this summer. And voting in Virginia is absolutely, and around the country, is foundational, as I always say. You have to be able to vote to participate in the democratic experiment that we have been going on in this country for well over 200 years. Voting is foundational. Everything comes from voting. If you're unable to vote, then you're unable to elect the people that you want to represent you, to carry the things that you believe in to local office, state office, or federal office. In a democracy, it all depends on the vote and putting that representative there who's going to carry the things that you believe in and hopefully get the policies or laws passed that you believe in, that you need to have done for your family and for yourself. So make sure you get out there and you do just a couple of things. And the first thing we talk about all the time is you want to be able to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, H.R. 4. That's right. I keep telling you about it every week. It has not changed. And it's something that we need to continue to do. And I've got all my computers dinging here, but I'm going to bring this screen up and I'm going to go over it again because I go over it every week. It's the main call to action that we have. And that main call to action is right here. We want to be able to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It's the bill that puts pre-clearance back into place. It does all the things that we need to have. It modernizes the voting rights formula for determining discrimination in states and localities. It also puts back into place the pre-clearance that you need to have. For example, what it also says in the bill is that any changes to any voting rules have to be declared at least 180 days before an election. At least that, and also pre-clearance so it can be looked at by the Department of Justice and everybody has the same playing field in all 50 states. And it really prevents voting suppression. And I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. The other thing that you have to do is you also have to, it also, excuse me, gives the government authority to send federal and observers to monitor jurisdictions for any potential risk of discrimination at the polls during voting. So all of these things are important. Got a couple of other technical things that are happening here. And so I'm looking at both places. So what we need to do here is, as my phone is going off too, I do apologize, is make sure that you're doing what we need to do to support the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. What you need to be able to do is to support your small business. You need to support the legislation that's out there for the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And you need to be able to make sure that that happens by you calling your congressperson and telling them that you support H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Checking some technical difficulties here. Stay with me, folks. Stay with me. Everything looks like we're okay here. We do have a couple of calls we're getting in here. We're just trying to check what's going on here. So the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, you've got to make sure that you're calling your congressman and that you're making sure you need to tell them, I support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And we're watching you. We want to make sure that that bill gets to the president's desk so it can be signed, because voting rights is fundamental. You have to do your voting rights. You have to have your Voting Rights Act. So let me go on to the next thing. And the next thing I want to talk to you about, of course, is H.R. 1. And H.R. 1 is for the People Act. And that really expands voting rights even more. So we've got great voting rights capability here in Virginia, but it's not the same all over the country. And that's the reason why when we talked earlier about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, it basically puts in the same thing that we've had since 1965, 64, voting rights, pre-clearance, everybody has to follow the same rules. That's no longer the case. So what happened was there was also an H.R. 1 developed called For the People Act of 2021. And basically, it expands access to the ballot box. It reduces the influence of big money in politics. It strengthens the ethic rules for public servants and implements anti-corruption schemes and for the purpose of fortifying our democracy and for other purposes. And every week I go through this and I tell folks, listen, this bill has some great things in it. Other than expanding the access to voting, it has automatic same-day voter registration nationwide, 2 weeks of early voting for all voters, a ban on purging of the voting rolls, restores full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which was decimated by the Supreme Court in 2013. So remember, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act basically helps to put that preclearance back in place, evens the playing field, and gives you unfettered access. Also, what it does is it has finance reforms like banning foreign money loopholes, additional election security to prevent gerrymandering, and it also grants states resources they need to make sure that they have the best voting machines and the safest voting machines, and other processes for auditing and securing your election results. So let me just say to you again, as I say every week, our call to action every day when you get out there is what? Call your congressperson. Tell them that I support H.R. 1, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I mean, that was H.R. 4, excuse me. And I also support H.R. 1, which I just told you about, which is the For the People's Act, which even expands voting rights even more so. Because once again, voting rights are fundamental. You cannot get anything done without having free, unfettered access to the ballot. So that's the main thing. Once again, I keep telling you, I've got my shirt on, did my march in Washington, which is for voting rights in Washington, D.C. It's fundamental to everything that we do. The people who you elect to your state, local, excuse me, and your federal representatives are taking your ideas forward, and they are supporting those and making sure that the laws and the policies that you need to have in place so that your family is secure and that you live, your life as the best possible life you can live. So get out there and do that call to action. Every day you basically want to put that out there. So support that. Let me tell you, let's move to another area too. But don't forget my call to action. Call your congressman, say, hey, I'm watching, support H.R. 1 and H.R. 4. We need President Biden to sign it. Make sure you do that every day. Let's go the other thing too. Oh, almost forgot. Make sure you're registered. And speaking of registered, we're going to talk a little bit about Virginia voting. In Virginia, we have elections every year. And this year, we've got a fantastic statewide candidates that are being elected. And we also have all of our House of Delegates folks that are being elected. Let me tell you who we have on top. We've got Terry McAuliffe, who's running for the governor again. Terry does a fantastic job. He did such a great job. He's back. He wants to do it again. We are tearing it up in Virginia. We currently also have Hala Ayala, who's also running for lieutenant governor. And she's doing a fantastic job and is a current delegate in the House of Delegates here in Virginia. And of course, Attorney General position, which is Mark Herring. Mark Herring's been out there for 8 years doing a fantastic job in Virginia, from everything from voting rights, making those accessible, to protecting a woman's right to choose, to a number of other issues, supporting laws that provide opportunities for small business, and getting rid of a lot of things that were really not good for Virginians, and that Virginians wanted him to change. But also, we've got a fantastic group of House of Delegates. Like I said, there's 100 of them running again, and Virginia is out there contesting in every area. Currently, we do have control of the Senate in the state of Virginia. We do currently have control of the House of Delegates, but we need to expand that so that we can continue to maintain that control, not just at the executive level with the governor and the lieutenant governor and the attorney general, but we also need to maintain that so they can bring things to the governor for him to sign and put them into law in Virginia, and continue to do the great job that our current governor, Ralph Northam, been doing, getting things taken care of course, along with Mark and other folks. So it's been really a great thing. So we basically want to continue down that road. Oh, I don't want to leave out our current lieutenant governor, which is Justin Fairfax. So people have always been doing what we needed to do in Virginia, but we want to spread that all across the country, having the same unfettered access to the vote and making sure people can vote locally. We've got some great local candidates too. And probably, if you're not from Northern Virginia, you may not have heard of people like Delegate Mark Sickles and Delegate Kathy Tran and Delegate Elizabeth Bennett Parker, and we've got Paul Krizak, who's a local delegate, and of course our local state senators. They're not running this year. I won't talk too much about them, but those delegates are all out there. We've got to maintain control of that House of Delegates in order to make sure that we are able to continue to do the great things we're doing in Virginia. So stay with us, folks. Stay with us. Okay, I'm going to put my mug back on the screen again. Make sure you're registered to vote. You can early vote in Virginia because of the laws that we've passed. Make sure you go out and just go ahead and put that vote, right in the the bucket now. That way you don't have to worry about November 2nd. Go ahead and just boom, go do it, get it done. There's flexible hours. There's souls to the polls on Sundays. There's numerous locations where you can go and vote early. So why not get it out the way, and you don't have to worry about it on November 2nd. But if you don't want to wait if you don't want to do it early, you can always show up on November 2nd. There's plenty of places for you to go to all your polls. If you have any questions, you have our information. Contact any of your local representatives, or either the caucus here, the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. We'll be happy to help you out. But that's all available to you. So we want to make sure that you continue to be able to do that. But I'm going to keep moving on here. I feel like things are going a little faster today, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the Build Back Better plan. And that Build Back Better plan has been fantastic. We know currently that we have the American Rescue Plan on a federal level. The government has already voted $1.2 trillion in place. I talk about it every week because if you own a small business, you should be aware of the Paycheck Protection Program. You should be aware that there's also the Economic Disaster Loan, Injury Disaster Loan, which allows you money to be, you can apply for that will allow you to scale your business, right? Which is good because a lot of people have been impacted. And those economic injury disaster loans are at an extremely low rate. It's with the Small Business Administration. You can apply for that money and scale your business either from where you were prior to COVID or during COVID, and more investments in your business. And these are directed at small businesses. And of course, there's a Shuttered Venue Operations Grant Program. So if you, a lot of places, movie houses, people who, theaters, people who are in the entertainment industry where they were coming together in these in the regular places they would come, have all but not been able to do that same business with COVID. So they've got special programs out there for them. The last two are the SBA Debt Relief Program, but the last and not least, though, is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. There's been a lot of restaurants that have been adversely impacted all around the country. The Democrats, the Biden administration has had the American Rescue Plan out there that allow businesses and restaurant owners, in this case, funds to keep them in business, because a lot of them have gone under as a result of almost 2 years of COVID. Okay. But let's talk a little bit about Build Back Better, because I know everybody's kind of heard about that, the infrastructure plans and what's going on with that. I talked a little bit about it last week, and what's in that bill. Well, let's tell you what's in that bill. The Build Back Better plan, this is just a high level of it that comes out of the White House, is an ambitious plan to create jobs, cut taxes, lower costs for working families, all paid for by making the tax code fairer, right? And making the wealthiest and the largest corporations pay their fair share. So when we talk lower costs, we're talking about lowering childcare costs, lowering higher education costs with 2 years of paid for community colleges, lower prescription drug prices, lowering also healthcare costs, and lowering housing costs. So this bill invests in the country over the next 10 years in lowering these costs for middle-class folks. It also cuts taxes for families with children, but it also has tax cuts for workers even without children. So last time, our competition or our folks on the other side of the aisle were just shoveling out money to a lot of billionaires and corporations that didn't need the money, trillions of dollars in your tax money to them. Well, that's not the case anymore. The Biden administration and Democrats are saying we need to take those resources and invest in families and small businesses, to cut their taxes so that they can have an opportunity to live a better life here in the United States. But also it creates jobs with workforce training money, clean energy jobs, investing in renewable energies, investing in electric cars and other things of that nature. And also, more importantly, it invests also in teachers and schools. So when we talk about that Build Back Better agenda, getting just a high level idea of what it does, lowering costs, cutting taxes, and creating jobs, and doing all those things really from a human infrastructure and from a physical infrastructure standpoint, but in words that you can understand. If you look at the bottom here, there's a link you can go to at www.whitehouse.gov/build-back-better to be able to see more of the specifics that are in that bill. So really take time to check that out so you have a better understanding of what it is. So I'm always happy to explain that. But you know what? I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I saw a very interesting tool that was out there that I want to tell people about so they can have an idea of how are you spending your money as a small business? How are you spending your money as an individual? There's a fantastic website that I saw that was out there that's called Corporate Goods Unite Us. And basically what it does is the Goods Unite Us has a program where it's a nonpartisan organization, and that nonpartisan organization looks at how money is being invested or being political donations are being made and how you're spending your money, because the bulk of the money that's out there right now, let me sort of make my screen a little bit bigger because I'm trying to see what I'm looking at here and I'm having a little bit of trouble. Hang with me here as I make it a little bit bigger. Oh, wait a minute. That's a little too big, but anyway, there we go. So, but basically, there's direct political donation. There's also indirect political donations that really come through how you spend your money. So how you spend your money is important. And if people understand that they're spending money with people who don't necessarily investing back into them or investing back into the politicians who are supporting the things that you believe in, then you're probably spending your money with people that you don't know that they're taking that money and giving it right back to people who are working against the things that you're trying to get accomplished. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here as I just take just a minute here to explain a little more of what this is. I'm going to get the right window here, and I'm going to go here to the home page here. And basically, what Goods Unite Us does, and it's basically, it sees a list of companies that have a commitment to halt PAC donations and things of that nature. Basically, what it does is corporations earn profits off of your everyday purchases, and some of those profits are then donated back to politicians and good causes and that you may not agree with. In fact, the average consumer funds politicians and PACs 3 times more than purchasing choices through direct political donations. So they're saying who you spend your money with is even more money that corporations get than people who give money directly to politicians through donations. And I just wanted to pull out a couple of examples so you can kind of understand what that is. I'm going to give you the first one. For example, everybody knows about Amazon, right? Amazon Corporation and all these organizations give resources and money to different groups. For example, if I've got the right one up here, yeah, Amazon basically gives 69% of its money to Democrats. 31%, they give to Republicans. But the donation breakdown is the company gives 53% of all its money of its political donations. 53% of that comes from the company. 47% of it comes from senior employees. So there's individual contributions and there are also corporate contributions. But on the whole, Amazon Corporation gives 69% of all those individual contributions and corporate contributions to Democrats. And to give you another example that you may want to look at here that kind of explains a little bit more is another company, kind of shows the other side of that fence. And it's just interesting to do that. And I'll tell you why I brought this up in a minute. The other one is, in this case, is McDonald's. Everybody goes there to get a burger, whatever they do, or McDonald's, which is the opposite. They give 39% of their money to Democrats, 61% to Republicans. The McDonald's Corporation's breakdown of that number is 73% of all that money comes from the company, and 27% of it comes from senior employees. So you really have companies that are out there getting donations from various different political organizations that don't always necessarily do what you want them to do. So my message to you as a small business, my message to you as an individual is take a look at this app, Good Unitas. Find out whether or not they're giving money to PACs or they're giving money to politicians who don't support or believe in the things that you believe in. And you don't have to take money out of your pocket and donate it directly to a politician for that to happen. It can happen just simply through you going there doing business, going there buying, your lunch, or buying, a shovel somewhere, whatever it is. But be a smart political consumer. Make sure that you are taking the time to make sure that you understand how you spend your money as a small business and how you spend your money as an individual does affect political outcomes. So you have to vote. You have to make sure you're a wise steward of your money and how you're spending it. And you also have to make sure that you're learning something new every day in this area. Most people think that they don't have time for that, but trust me, you really do want to do that. You shouldn't be financing your own suppression or your own oppression. Don't do it. It's not a smart thing to do. So take a look at that Good Unitas tool and find out who's doing what and how you're spending your money. Then the choice is up to you. As I always say, when you know better, you got to do better. But I'm going to go back to what I said before. Voting Rights Act, you got to make sure we get that passed. It's important that we get that done because those are the people who are going to be making decisions on you and on the things that you need for your family and for your small business. If you're a small business owner, if you're an individual, they still affect you as well. All the way up and down the line, local, state, and federal. But folks, let me tell you, we've got a really fantastic guest coming up here. We're getting near that point in time where we talk about that. I tell you a little bit about our guests, and we do have a fantastic guest. We have a guest every week, either a candidate of some sort or some small business owner or people who are getting things done in the community. And this week, we really do have a great guest. His name is John Wickham. John Wickham has been around for, he's been around for a minute, but over the last 10 years, he's had a lot of experience with environmental policy analysis. He's been a consultant with the World Bank and GEF, and there's a couple of other OECD. John will explain what those are, and the US Congressional Experience as well. So he's been out there doing things. He's been a great contributor to climate change solutions in the area, environmental and natural resources global practice, and he's written briefs on the impacts of climate change for various different member countries in the United Nations organization, which is the UNFCCC. I don't know what that is, but John knows what it is. He's going to tell us all about that. He's also done a lot of research in long-term climate adaptation plans. He's looked and authored plans for the disbursement of funds for client investment funds, which are called CIFs, which basically comparing what client investments funds are doing with their project versus non-CIF funds. But John's done a lot, not just the 10 years he's done what he's recently done, but he's also been an activist with the DC Climate Action. And he's been working with a lot of grassroots organization, and he's been an advocate for early and progressive action by the city to really look at what's going on and to adapt climate change, updating the electric grid in the city, testifying before DC Public Infrastructure Improvement Financing Act of 2013. And those things included things like supporting selected underground wires while installation of modern two-way communications capability in the grid and smart grid enhancements. So, I mean, this guy's been doing some things, and, you know, looking at various different ways that we can do that. When we go back to the Build Back Better Act and these sort of investments in our infrastructure, these are the sort of things and the policies that will help to make things better for people in the United States. And he's also worked with the Baltimore Office on Sustainability, Urban Adaptation. He's just done a lot. Climate change, science, risk management, energy and utility subjects. He's been on it from all different sides, reporting back to the DC Climate Action and Community Residents. So, folks, without further ado, I want to bring on our guest for today, who's going to really explain a lot about what he does. And also, he's going to tell us a lot about climate change and the great work he's been doing for quite a number of years. So I'm happy to bring on John Wickham. John, how are you, man?
Great, Mark. Thanks so much. It's a wonderful introduction. Can't thank you enough.
I'm glad you liked it, John. You've been doing all this, man. So it's fantastic having you here, and being able to see you and have you tell us a little bit about all the great things that you've been doing. So tell us a little bit about you personally, and just, you know, what you've been doing of late, and you know, climate change or not.
Well, it's great to join your meeting. It's just you do a wonderful thing here, Mark. And yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a native of Fairfax County. I grew up in the county. I went to high school at what's called West Potomac now, what we call the Groveton.
Okay.
Got a little gray on me, and but I actually was a childhood friend of Paul Krizak, so we're pretty much near contemporaries, you know.
Oh, I'll tell you, when you said Groveton, man, you're dating yourself there a little bit, and dating me too.
But you know, I know Jeff McKay claims that he owns it. He grew up along the strip, and whenever I got hungry on a weekend night, I'd go out on the Route 1 strip and get myself a hamburger. At that time, I didn't know McDonald's gave to the Republicans, but this is kind of my home territory, and it really shaped me a lot, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, I tell people all the time, they really need to take the time to see where they're spending their money. They might be surprised at who's giving money to who. You're like, whoa, I didn't know that. I might get I might do something a little different in the future.
It's a great service, Mark. It's
right.
It's a great way to set up incentives. But you've talked a lot about my background, and I grew up in this area. I got actually when I was in high school. I don't know when you finished high school, Mark, but right around '79 when we had that second Arab oil embargo, I was lining.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that really shocked me, and that from a very early age, I got interested in protecting the environment, doing the right thing, and that's kind of how I got started. And then I ended up pursuing that in graduate school. I got a master's degree in environmental policy and science, environmental management. It was a degree that helped me work either in the federal government at EPA or in a health and safety office at a company, or so it's kind of an environmental management degree that is my background. It also gives me a little bit of grounding in science, and those tools have helped me advise governments, write climate briefs. One of the things I'm most fond of, Mark, was I served as kind of a team leader for a group of small businesses in the District of Columbia, local businesses, renewable energy firms, young startup companies that were really exciting, that were profitable, but that needed to grow their markets. And I served as a catalyst, and I put these local businesses together with a very well-established energy efficiency firm that came from Vermont, called the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, VEIC. And that was just as exciting. It's kind of a model of what we can do here in Virginia. And some of that's already been going on. We've got offshore down in Portsmouth. But in DC, my experience there in 2012 was putting the locals together with another out-of-state firm from Vermont that was really the first state in the nation to establish a statewide energy efficiency program. And a lot of people, conservatives included, would always say, "Oh, look at the cost. It's going to cost. You have to put more, more caulking, more insulation. It's just going to be a cost." But these people had run the numbers, and they knew that if each home in the state weatherized, if each business, dotted its I's, followed its P's and Q's, that eventually they'd each all benefit. And they did, and the state saved lots of money. They didn't have to build new energy plants, and they established a model that state after state, you name it, Minnesota, California, states began to follow the Vermont plan. It was called Efficiency Vermont was the name of the group, and they ran all the energy efficiency programs for Vermont. And because they'd done so well, me and a few other entrepreneurs, local citizen activists, decided to reach out to them and put the local DC renewable energy firms in touch with the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. And we're in a very competitive bidding process. We're with 2 other bidders to make the final 3, and our team won. And we now run what is still ongoing called the Sustainable Energy Utility, which is the energy efficiency arm of the DC government that works with businesses, helps them save money, and helps them install things like hot water heaters, solar hot water heaters on the roofs. And so it's kind of a little, R&D pocket for small businesses to go to, where they can just get renewable technologies and implement them in their businesses.
So that company has the contract in order to provide that assistance to various different small businesses in DC who are trying to do the things you talked about. They still do that, huh? Yep.
They're existing and they grow by the year. They have little turf battles with different other agencies, the DC Department of Energy and Environment. But overall, it's been really, really successful. They've met all their energy efficiency goals, saved energy, saved money for the district, brought energy consumption down in each of the district agencies. And they've also offered jobs to young people and provided a sense of hope and excitement to the younger generation. You and I, Mark, we did our high schooling a little while ago. So, but the people coming in behind us also are looking for new, exciting jobs in the area. And so when something like that works, it kind of has a social multiplier effect as well.
So how would they be affected in just the sort of things that you're talking about regarding the climate, John, with some of that impending legislation and some of the legislation that also came out of the American Rescue Plan? Has any of that either going to be good if we get that Build Back Better Build Back Better legislation in place, as far as what they're talking about with renewable energy, and also some of the funding? I think Virginia took some of that American Rescue Plan money and invested it in things that were related to the environment here in Virginia too. Are you aware of any of that?
I'm not really an expert on it, Mark, but I think what you've sketched out is basically right. I mean, whenever you have a federal bill that is expanding things like, well, as you know, the solar and wind both benefit from the investment tax credit and the production tax credit, two incentives in the IRS tax code, and that's one thing that makes it affordable to homeowners and small businesses as well. So whenever Biden and his team say they're going to extend that or expand it, that gooses the engine and it gets it going, and then that allows companies to offer those benefits to new homes and to grow their businesses.
Well, that seems to be a good thing. I don't know. You've done a lot of different things. You've written a lot of papers. You've done things internationally, addressing things. Any of that other stuff you want to kind of give us a little more clue on some of the other things you've done? You look like you're a pretty good author as well as an activist.
Oh, you're really kind, Mark. Yeah, I mean, in the past, I've written papers on things like, I was a part of an international team at the World Bank that was assembled immediately after the Paris Climate Accord was signed. There was a lot of excitement, obviously, everywhere, but especially at the World Bank. And we just wrote so-called country climate profiles for each of the nations that were members of this UN framework convention on climate change that you were articulating earlier. And it is a long acronym, and it gets pretty interesting when you scope out in the next 20 to 40 years what the science is saying, whether you're going to have more or less water, whether you're going to have more or less storms, and then you look at different sectors of your economy, which one's going to be impacted either positively or negatively, and where you would do well to invest. So these were reports that were, and not only did we write these kind of futuristic scenario type reports, we were asked to do that in just one page. It was also kind of an experiment in data visualization and the new use of data things that would not only be useful and long term, but also easily consumable by busy banking executives. And so it was an exciting project. Sorry, I'm in a public setting here.
Okay.
But that's an example of something that I wrote that that was helpful.
Okay, it's all live. You got to do with live stream, so it's okay.
But and that was for a large multinational organization. But the idea was to show areas of investment, and these governmental bodies can also co-invest with private investors, and so it has this multiplier effect. It isn't just a government report. It's a report that actually greases the skids and helps. They call it co-financing at the World Bank.
Right.
You get the government throws a little money in, and then private business says, "Oh, I think that project looks less risky. I might build a solar array, maybe in Morocco." The King of Morocco was a huge supporter of renewable energy. So just a little bit of government down payment will often get things going. And these reports were kind of hoping everyone see the bigger picture.
Well, it looks like you guys have done a lot of that. You've got that private-public partnership going on, which you just spoke about. You also talk about the things that you've done in the United Nations, because this whole climate thing is not just a U.S. thing. It's got to be a worldwide thing in order to attack the problems that we're having with climate change and fossil fuels and all the like. It's got to be a commitment that happens over a long period of time, though. Hopefully, try to dial back some of the not very good things that have been happening around the world, not just here in the United States. But also I saw something about climate investment funds in your bio. Can you tell us a little bit about those climate investment funds?
Sure. There are exciting pools of money there at the bank, and the bank created these seeing the coming storm. So they have different funds. They have one called the Forest Investment Plan, FIP. Then there's another, so that each one for each of the major sectors that are affected by the climate crisis. There was another one called SREP, which is Scaling Up Renewable Energy Program. That's putting seed money in small developing countries that can use it, promoting renewable energy, trying to replace things like kerosene and generators that produce a lot of pollution. Or you can do like an improved biomass cook stove if you they have a lot of need in Central America where they make pupusas and other native cuisines, absolutely delicious cuisines. But they make them using technologies that are thousands of years old. They cook in open fires, and these innovative funds can help low-income families eliminate household smoke, reduce childhood respiratory infections, and at the same time reduce climate change. And it all happens with just a little bit of outside funding.
And also, it helps to reduce deforestation. What do you call it? I get the word right, because they're not cutting down all the wood they can find. So all those sort of things really kind of help those countries. And I would think that there are opportunities there for some innovative small businesses where they can be a part of that in making those things better. It kind of brings to mind to me some of the things that Virginia is doing out there with the renewable energy, with the big, what do you call it? The big fans. What do they call those things, man?
Turbines.
Out in the middle of the bay.
Oh yeah. Offshore wind turbines.
Offshore wind turbines. And there's room for large companies and small companies, and that all those sort of things are really, I think, show opportunities for small businesses while really attacking this climate change thing. And those are the jobs of the future, because the whole fossil fuel thing is not sustainable. It's not going to go away right away, but we're on that track. We need to kind of stay on that track. The other thing I saw that was in your bio was a smart grid. Tell me about what you know about that smart grid.
Well, mostly it has to do, it's using what they would now call artificial intelligence, but just using, innovative electrical engineering developments that enables the grid to operate in a way it just didn't before. Before, there was a lot of unidirectional flow of current, from the generator to the homes. And now you've got, things like appliances in your home that can say, Mark, I'm already cold enough. You may have taken 2 beers out, maybe 3 beers if the Washington football team was losing. But now I'm back to my regular level. I don't need any more juice. And so you get so-called smart appliances that are sending signals from the home back to the utility main plant, whether it's in Richmond or wherever your plant is located. And so you have that. It's helpful to have electrons going in two directions, and then you can reduce the overall demand for the grid as a whole. And that's one aspect of smart grid.
Well, that's an important thing. A lot of people have those smart thermostats in their house, which are tied to their phones and their Wi-Fi systems. Just basically, it's keeping a look at how the temperature has been in your home for a period of time. It knows when no one's in the house, and it turns the heat down. All those sorts of things. But there's a lot of opportunities for small technology companies and other companies to really sort of help out in that whole effort that's going on with artificial intelligence, obviously, and then how it's in smart devices or the Internet of Things. I mean, these are all opportunities for people to do business and also to do good. So, and also small companies. You know, I'm always talking about how can small benefit? How can people who need equity to find a way to get into to business and to also help out what we're trying to get done policy wise. You've got some good things. Anything else you want to tell us about, John?
You've given me a great opening, Mark. It's just delightful to join you. You're so dynamic. You get us all fired up, and you're so knowledgeable. It's just such a privilege to be with you.
Thank you.
A couple of things I might mention just before I duck out is that there are really good people who work in this space too. There's a guy in the neighboring jurisdiction of Arlington, a guy named Scott Sklar.
Okay.
He's been working. He's a real veteran. He came to D.C. from New York City. He had worked for the U.S. Senators Jacob Javits.
Okay. Yeah.
And he worked for Jacob Javits for 10 years in the U.S. Senate, but he lives in this area, and he is just a huge proponent of solar and other energies. He works with small businesses across the country. You could do, if you were a small business and wanted to learn more about this, you would investigate Scott Sklar, Sklar, through Stella Capital.
Okay.
He knows all about how to get grants. He runs tours of his home there. He's not far. He's in the Clarendon area.
Okay. Yeah.
Tour of it. He's got multiple technologies, including geothermal energy underneath his ground.
Wow.
And he shows how it works. He shows how you can fund it, and he shows, if you're a company, what you might install on any given home. And he's also a guru. He works with federal government agencies. He helps. He's worked in these agencies himself in the past, and he helps work with these agencies funding these projects in developing countries. So, in addition to myself, there's a lot of knowledgeable people in the Northern Virginia area who also could help small businesses.
Well, that's something we definitely got to follow up on, and maybe get an opportunity to talk to that gentleman, maybe have him on the show, or at least have an opportunity to speak with him, see whether or not he's interested in doing some more of what he's saying. Because I know a lot of folks who are in the technology. The technology piece really kind of crosses over into the climate piece a lot. So there's a whole lot to be looked at, and we definitely have some people that also are just interested in working the end of the business you're on too. But man, you're also out in Baltimore too. I keep looking at your stuff here. It said, the Baltimore Office of Sustainability on Urban Adaptation and Climate Change. What's that all about? Tell us about that. We still have time, so you tell us a little more, John.
Well, that was more of just a little project, and I was introduced through a very, again, a younger person, younger than me, but very concerned about rising sea levels and urban air pollution. There's a young woman who now runs the Baltimore Office of Sustainability named Kristen Baja.
Okay.
It's a Croatian name, apparently. It sounds kind of Latino, but she's a very lovely, capable person who very early on started helping businesses in Baltimore look at what, extreme weather events would do. Let's say a Hurricane Ida were to hit Baltimore directly. What would banks do? And she would do things like draw up call lists so that each of the bankers and people whose employees would be affected, they could all call each other and call the city and say, will we send workers in today or not? And it was a way of mitigating, damages and costs and and streamlining their operations in events of extreme weather. That's just one small thing that she was doing. But she also came and gave a big picture view of what Baltimore was doing, how it was helping these businesses prepare. And so she was so far ahead of DC. I brought her to DC and I arranged for her to come and talk to audiences here. And that's something we could do with your small business committee. I could work with you, Mark, and find exciting speakers to talk about what other cities are doing. And Baltimore, of course, has a very active sustainability program now. I gave that presentation several years ago, but for example, I think Baltimore has a series of flood insurance things. Baltimore, of course, is right there in Baltimore Harbor. It's one of the largest harbors actually in the world, deepest harbors in all of the world. They do a lot of trade there. And so, but because there's a lot of commerce and a lot of population right there on the coast, they need to have up-to-date flood insurance plans. And so Kristen, through her office, was helping notify businesses of where to build, what to build, and when and when not to use the federal standard, because the federal standard up until very recently has been a little too weak.
Right.
And so that's another example of something that an office like that with a focus on climate can do to help its businesses not undergo damages.
What about some of the things that are happening in Virginia in particular? Have you seen? I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff come out of the governor's office about the offshore wind machines, as well as other things having to do with the climate, things having to do with building up the ports in Virginia and upgrading them. If you were going to advise small business or advise the Virginia politicians on what they would probably be the number one thing you think would probably that they at least need to look into or add more expertise to, what would that be?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I'm not a climate scientist, but from my general familiarity with other regions is, climate variability. Obviously, I mean, if you're in Old Town, if you're in the city of Alexandria, flooding is almost a daily.
Oh yeah. Hear about that all the time.
And thanks to Dan Stork, our supervisor in Fairfax County, he's helping lead this climate adaptation plan for the county. And I've been on a series of town halls with that, and I just sat in on one last week, and they've got really exciting interactive software. They're developing maps that show with different color codes the areas that will flood most. For instance, between you and me, Mark, and other businesses will be interested to see this. They could show that the number one area for flooding vulnerability with rising sea levels is this golf course and this green area called Bellhaven, which
I know where that is.
Yeah. Right near the Woodrow Wilson Bridge.
Right.
Now, there aren't that many businesses down there, but it gives you an example of how valuable these maps are. There are a lot of assets there. That golf course and that club is extremely important. It's obviously a social asset. I know there are pizzerias down there along Belhaven Road. There's been a lot of small businesses moved in there. It used to be called Pat's Market when I was a kid. But when you have information like that, so as a business, a small business in our area, trying to get ahead of the curve of where climate vulnerable areas are, and they're already developing tools that would make it very feasible for any small business to have an employee go and access these materials and then get back to the company and say, hey, well, look, when we build a new outlet or a new retail opening, we might want to choose here and not there. And that's an example where businesses can really get ahead.
Well, it's kind of like when they do those environmental study impacts, things of that nature, right?
Exactly.
And one of the things that's happened locally, since we're talking some local stuff here real quick, is the new widening of the roads. Because really, as I understand it, I'm not a scientist or an engineer, but I do know, or I've heard that the more flat surfaces that you build, when you add more lanes to the highway, you take away less of the natural environment. They have to do something that affects the environment, that affects the water runoff and other different things. In most cases, when you're building more widening roads and building more flat surfaces, other than displacement of some businesses and things of that nature, there's always sort of a trade-off between the benefit and the loss or the negative impact. So how do you feel about that, or what would you rec or give people advice on that?
Well, it's a tough question. It's such a good question. I don't really have an adequate answer, but I think it's a great question. It's a question that all businesses should ask themselves. Even on the latest town hall there with this climate adaptation plan, where they had all these terrific employees from Virginia Department. I think they called it it was Office of Environmental and Energy Cooperation. Their mission is literally to help the different agencies within Virginia state government collaborate, because there's so many of them. But they actually had some citizen participants like me. There are over 80 people in the town hall, and 2 or 3 of them were from the Tysons area, and they were bringing up just such a road widening that you were talking about. I don't know if it was near the Virginia Legion Bridge there, or there's American Legion Bridge.
American Legion Bridge going into Maryland, right?
And they mentioned the name of it. I didn't catch it, but it sounds like a lot of tree clearing. It's and you get this jurisdictional gumbo where you've got this is a VDOT thing. This is a Virginia. This is approved at the state level. It's already received approval. It's barreling ahead, but it actually is increasing the vulnerability of all the homes and the businesses in that area.
Right.
And it was so acrimonious that the moderators had to say, well, look, this is we don't have time to handle all the feedback on this, but you really put your finger on an important issue, Mark.
Well, that environmental impact analysis you build is big things. I mean, is a big deal, and usually when you're talking about 2 different states and the federal government too, so you got a whole lot going on there. So you're right about that. But it's always interesting. I know the work that you do is very interesting work. There's obviously a small business component to it. There's an economic impact, environmental impact to it, international impact. So I mean, it's so many different facets around climate change, local or international, across the country. So there's always something to do. So if you're going to recommend to people what they can do on their own, just the average Joe, when it comes to climate change, what would be your advice to them? Because I want you to kind of get that out there. And I also got one other quick question is, what's your personal pet project thing that you would really like to see get done? We got 3 or 4 minutes left here. I want to kind of hear you talk a little bit about those things.
Oh, you asked such good questions, Mark. You're a natural host. My goodness. Let's see here. You said pet projects, and what was the first part of the question?
The first one was, what can an individual or either a small business, just what could someone who's not in the industry do to help out with climate change from your standpoint as an expert in that area?
Sure. Well, it's a terrific question. Energy audits are a very classic way. If you haven't done it, and you can hire people to come. You can even contact, either of all places, you can contact Dominion Energy. They'll have an energy efficiency they even, with your monthly energy bill, you'll see offers to, hey, would you like to have an energy audit? So in many states, including Virginia, the utility itself will actually offer you help in finding ways to lower your energy bill. And then you can also go out and hire a third party to take a look at your property and look at places you could seal leaky windows, or help put in new windows if you want. So an energy audit is a great place for a business or a home because buildings are one of the greatest consumers of energy. And so an energy audit is a very simple and yet a very effective thing that any individual or business owner can do.
So basically you're saying the more efficient you can keep your home or your business, the less we have to use energy, just driving coal and fossil fuels and everything else.
Huge driver, lowers the energy bill for the business. So that's a classic win-win and no regret step you can take. That's a win-win. We're going to have a tax on plastic bags soon, and using less plastic bags. That's a simple thing that any individual can do. When you go to the grocery store, bring your own reusable bag, throw it in the back of your car or in your back seat, and use those. what are other things you can do? You can ride your bike. I've become
Right.
an avid bike rider. Try to do it. These are busy roads, but for short trips and things, you'd be surprised. Buy a little pannier, throw it on the back of your bike, and go to your local grocery store. You get healthy, and
Or
you'll
get
save
yourself
energy.
one of those electric bikes, and you can kind of recharge it and ride it around. Now, before you go, I got two things. It's 8 o'clock, so I want to know what's your personal pet project that you have around climate change, and then you got to give us your social media contacts so if people want to contact you.
Oh, sure. Personal pet project, mean for the county or for our?
Just for you, what's your thing, or maybe it's not climate, maybe you have something else.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks, Mark. So this has been so much fun being with you and your guests. Let's see here. Well, keeping my eyes open for places we need to keep the pressure on. For instance, Metro, I think, can do a better job. Metro safety, the operation of Metro is a real disappointment. I see little things like, I don't know, I think questionable contracting practices in Old Town Alexandria at the King Street Station. They've been building a new parking lot there out front, a new bus station. It's taken them 3 or 4 years. I don't think that sends a very good message to the public. How is Metro spending its money, right? I mean, I want these guys to have jobs, but we see that we saw that whole station was redone, and now they're doing the escalators again. And now we hear that there's been derailment at the near the Roslyn station, and so I think simply that's a pet interest I have is working with. There are citizen advisory boards with Metro and making sure that, and Don Beyer and our local reps are huge on this, but making sure that we're aware and we're pushing that, because public transit is one thing that's always a part. We'd all love to drive Teslas. We'd all love to drive these Nissan Leafs, but having public transit's important for the broader community.
Well, and it helps with climate change. Well, so John, give us your social media, man, so we can definitely whatever you want to give out. It's up to you. Whichever is a good way for people if they want to get a hold of you and some of your expertise.
Yeah, I'm available on Facebook at John Wickham at facebook.com, and my Twitter handle. I'm embarrassed. I don't even remember. I think it's John Wickham at Twitter.
Well, there you go. We know how to get you. If not, they can contact me. And basically, we want to be able to just sort of, we're happy to have you. Happy to have you on the show. I'm looking to make sure that we've got our music coming up here. We're about to come to the end. Oh, there it is. John, fantastic having you on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live. We got to have you back. We appreciate you being here, and hopefully you have safe travels and wherever you're going out there. Sound like the airport. But hopefully we'll see you back next time, John. We'll see you, man. Thanks folks for watching the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live. Take care, my friend.